Welcome back to the 504 Core Podcast, episode 67. Back with Zack Nagy today. A lot of LC stuff. I'll let you take it in whatever direction you want. Obviously football's coming back up. So, go from there.
Yeah, look, right now LSU's in the midst of fall camp, and they're absolutely cooking. I mean, we're about a week in today. August 8th is the 1 week mark. It's day 7 of fall camp, and it's been a lot. They've kind of implemented a new scheme defensively. We're starting to see Blake Baker kind of put his touch on things, his spin on things, and it's been really nice to see just different personnel, different looks. I've been impressed so far. A couple of standouts for me on that side of the ball. We'll talk about offense in a little bit, but for me on defense, you got to talk about Ashton Stamps. And he's been a guy who has all the opportunity in the world to cement that cornerback one spot and really become the go-to guy in the secondary. He's bulked up to about 190 pounds. He fills out his uniform. He looks the part. He's been one of the more competitive cornerbacks. And there's a lot of guys fighting for playing time right now. But if I'm looking at one guy and penciling one guy in as a starter on that in the secondary as a whole, it's really going to be Ashton Stamps. He's emerged through camp, and he's impressed me in just about every way. He came up with a pair of interceptions during media viewing so far, a bunch of pass breakups, and he's a player that I'm really circling as a guy who can become a breakout candidate. So in the secondary, you're going to have a lot of flip-flop. You're going to have a lot of turnover, and I'm excited to see what Ashton Stamps can do because that's the guy that I'm circling.
Is he a lock for first-team cornerback?
Yeah, I think if you were to ask me who's a starting guy right now, I mean, you're running with a first team of Ashton Stamps and Sage Ryan, and I just really can't anticipate Sage Ryan coming out as your day one starter. So if I was to pencil one guy in, it would probably be Ashton Stamps, and then you have about 5 other guys competing for the opposite side of him. So it's going to be a battle for the next 2 weeks of camp for sure. But Ashton Stamps, to me, to answer that question in short, yeah, I definitely think that he's going to be your starting cornerback.
That was probably the most alarming thing I heard in the offseason. Like, oh, we're cross training Sage Ryan. It's like, okay, like Sage
Yeah,
Ryan
I
wasn't
think
good.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are like just the Sage Ryan experiment, the Sage Ryan experience. A lot of people have a lot of things to say, a lot of comments to say. Cross training him was a unique approach for me because I think you just want to find his bread and butter. And I think last year we kind of saw that the cornerback position was not his bread and butter. So it's kind of like, okay, let's throw him in the safety mix. Let's see what he can do there. And look, they're trying to see where he can find his spot. And I like the rest of the LSU world, are intrigued to see what happens with him because we won't know more until probably midway through next week.
Is he? I don't know if he's a good slot corner, but do you think he'd be like more of a slot guy? Like I would say this. That's like kind of the star position of this defense, right? It's like a slot, like
Right.
versatile.
I don't know where you put Sage right now. I need to see a little bit more from him. He's serviceable. Like he's a serviceable player. He was a 5-star recruit. He's a gamer. You know, he can get on the field and make an impact. But standards are high at LSU. It's championship or bust. And obviously, last season he didn't necessarily play well. He got beat over the top on several occasions. Um, to kind of go back to your question, I don't know if I would put him in the slot because, like you said, you're kind of starting to see that star role get mixed around right there. I don't really know where Sage Ryan's going to fit into this defense, but that's something that I'll have a better answer for you come middle of next week for sure.
And then how are they working in Zy Alexander? I mean, he was obviously best cornerback last year. He wasn't bad like a lot of guys were last year, but he definitely was. He was not bad. He was a solid player. Do you think he could emerge as? I know he's coming off the torn ACL. Do you think he could kind of emerge as the second corner to pair along with Stamps?
Yeah, so Zai's still working back. He's still rehabbing pretty hard. If you were to ask me where he's at, I'd probably say around 80 to 85%. He's not as close to 100 as I would have liked him to be. But then again, he's coming off of a torn ACL, and it's how the body reacts. So however the ACL comes back intact, that'll be the story there. But he got beat over the top by Kyron Lacey the other day when we were going out of the facility, and it showed. He's a step slow still. He needs to hit his stride, and he's not quite there yet. If you were to ask me if I think he's going to be a starter next to Stamps, I don't think I would say that week 1 necessarily yet. He could flash over the next couple of weeks, but we're in full pads now. So it's full contact now. So I want to see how much he's cleared for. I want to see where he's at there. But that second cornerback spot is going to be one that has a lot of bodies fighting for playing time, whether it's P.J. Woodland, Zy Alexander, Zavion, Sage Ryan, Jair Brown, J.K. Johnson. I mean, I can go on and on. You have about 6 to 7 guys that are fighting for one spot there, but I think you're going to see a by committee approach. I think you're going to have your 2 starters, but you're going to see a lot of guys get on the field as well. But as for the first team as a whole, I think Ashton Stamps is penciled in, and we'll see over the next couple of weeks what happens there on the opposite side of him.
One thing too, weird. I don't know if you've even talked about it. Just LSU special team has been terrible the past. I mean, ever since kind of Kelly took over. Is there any like noticeable differences like in special team, or is it just kind of like because last year we just like just catch the ball, fair catch. Like if you get 5 yards, cool. We got Jaden Daniels backing you up. Like doesn't really matter. Like just don't muff the punt. Like is there any like special approach to special teams this year? I heard they had Harold Perkins on special teams. Like, are they taking? Do you feel like they're taking a more serious approach to that? Have you
Yeah,
seen
I
anything?
would say so, and that goes to the addition that they made in the transfer portal from Zavion Thomas. This is an all-conference return man. He's a return specialist, whether you want to put him as a kick returner or a punt returner. And I don't think you're going to see fair catch and just like pray to God that they don't muff this year like last year. I really think that you're going to see some break off runs, whether it's from Aaron Anderson, Zavion Thomas. You have a true speedster and true freshman Jelani Watkins back there as well. So you have a lot of guys that can step into the mix and be very impressive. But I think Zavion Thomas is going to be your go-to guy, and he's as impressive as all hell. And I'm intrigued to see what they do there. But special teams unit as a whole, I can't see it getting much worse. I think they're going to take a step in the right direction. And kind of we talked just now about the return specialist spot, but I mean you have a punter battle right now, and I know a lot of people sit back and they're like, well, damn, nobody wants to talk about that. To me, I've been asked about it 3 times now this week. Everybody's want to know what the hell is going on with the punters right now. And you had Peyton Todd. You've had him for a couple of years. He was underwhelming during spring camp. So you went out and you hit the portal and you added graduate transfer Blake Oschendorf, who was an all-conference punter at Louisiana Tech. And for me, I think he has the upper leg here. Figure like all jokes aside, I think he has the upper leg here. I think this is a guy who's looked a lot better than Peyton Todd throughout camp, and I think he's going to emerge and become your starting punter before it's all said and done. So special teams as a whole, I think you're going to improve. Can't get much worse. It's a lot like the defense. You can't get much worse. I think you're going to see those 2 facets of the game improve in a pretty big way heading into 2024.
Yeah, that's a good point. Punter's pretty slept on thing. I mean, I feel like we rarely saw him last year. Anytime Jaden
Yeah,
Daniels hit the
Jay
ball,
Bramblett was your punter last year, and he rarely ever kicked because Jaden
yeah.
Daniels was just chiming down the field and just putting points on the board every single time. So you
Yeah,
never punted the ball.
you could have asked me who the punter was. I'd be like, I probably don't even remember.
Somebody asked me
I could pick one
yesterday.
out of a lineup, but I
Yeah,
wouldn't know.
I was like, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, without a doubt.
Well, that's interesting. Who's kind of flashed on the offensive side of the ball in camp?
Man, there's so many guys to name. I think the first one that comes to mind is really just who everybody wants to hear about, and it's Caleb Jackson. I mean, he's a sophomore stud. He's put on 35 pounds since he arrived on campus a year and a half, 2 years ago.
How the hell is that possible?
It's
Mexican
ridiculous.
steroids? I mean, how the hell
He
do you
showed
put on
up on
35 pounds?
campus hovering around 200 pounds, and now he's sitting at 235. And this isn't one of those things where like it's just a roster number. Like he looks the part. He looks 235. This guy is a maniac. He looks fantastic, and for me, he still kept that burst of speed as well. He was known for his track speed, and I think he's continued to kind of hold his own there. So I've been really impressed with him. And then other guys that are standing out to me are Chris Hilton and Kyron Lacey. I mean, Kyron Lacey had the notorious drop issues last season. He hasn't necessarily been a consistent guy, but he's matured. And Brian Kelly's talked about his maturation and just the way that he's developed as a player, and it's shown. I haven't seen him drop a ball during fall camp yet. And the same goes for Chris Hilton, who's going to be a speedster, whether you put him in the slot or on the outside. He's a player that can really step in and emerge as a key piece for this team, whether it's as a vertical threat or on the slants / crossing routes, whatever you need. I think Chris Hilton's going to be your guy as long as he can stay healthy. So obviously you lose Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., and those are 2 guys, obviously first-round talents, but you're bringing in an embarrassment of riches at the receiving core, and that starts with Kyron Lacey, Chris Hilton, not to mention Liberty transfer C.J. Daniels, who was just named a Bolitnikoff watch list member. So you have 3 guys who are certainly as impressive as it gets, and then your backups are superstars too, whether it's Aaron Anderson, Zavion Thomas, Shelton Sampson's finally starting to come into his own. Your receiving core is fantastic, and that's something that's caught my eye over the first week of practice for sure.
Is Zavion Thomas hurt right now?
Zavion Thomas is still battling a minor hamstring issue. They're being pretty cautious with him to get him back, but this is a guy who's going to be good by week 1, and he's going to be a key piece to what they do on offense and special teams.
Yeah, hamstrings always linger, so I'm not surprised to hear that. But yeah, I mean, when I watched him at Mississippi State, I was like, dude, this dude flashes on the screen. So I have pretty high hopes for him. I kind of hope he's more than a special teams guy, which I think he's more than capable of doing. So Zavion
I
Thomas is
would
kind
agree.
of the guy. I think people are going to sleep it on him. Honestly, I mean, everyone's going to want to mention the guys you just mentioned, but watching him at Mississippi State, I do believe he's a little more than what people might give him credit for. Is Aaron Anderson kind of getting pushed down? I haven't really heard much of
If you would have
anything
asked me
from
that on
him.
Monday, I would have said yes. But then on Tuesday, he came out and had his best day of practice, in my opinion. He had 0 drops, was flashing on short routes, looked really impressive. He looks like he's getting that twitchiness, that athleticism back. Obviously, he's battled a couple knee injuries here and there, but I think he's starting to finally hit his stride and kind of work his way back into that key second team rotation, not kind of like at the bottom of the second man rotation. I think he's becoming a guy who's emerging. So I'm excited to see what he can do there. And then as a return guy, I think it's going to be important that he kind of hits his stride there as well, because Zavion Thomas is one guy, of course, but you got to have 2 serviceable people as a kick return and punt. So I'm excited to see what he does there, but I wouldn't necessarily say he's falling down the depth chart. I think he's just finally starting to hit his stride, actually.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to play all these guys. I mean, it's obviously a great problem to have, but another guy I'm really, really high on is Trey'Dez Green. I heard he's been lighting up camp. Anything specific you saw that you're just like, wow, like how's this guy a freshman?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you walk out on the practice field and you see Trey'Dez Green, you say, wow, and your eyes kind of pop. You see a 6'7", 245-pounder who's a true freshman. And then you kind of start to watch him play ball, and you're like, how the hell has this guy only been playing football for a couple of years? Like, this wasn't his first love. His first love was basketball. And now he's kind of starting to emerge as a football player as well. And you're going to hear me use the word emerge a lot because that's what you're starting to see from a lot of these guys. And for Trey'Dez alone, I mean, he's flown up the depth chart. He's shown he's capable of being a receiving tight end. He's improving as a blocker, as is Kamorian Pimpton. So you have 2 tight ends that are extremely versatile right underneath Mason Taylor. I think your tight end room's absolutely loaded, and Trey'Dez Green is really just scratching the surface. There is no ceiling on this kid. Like, this is a freakish human being. When he's out on the field, your jaw drops. When he makes a play, you're like, how did he do that? Like, how is that even possible? Like, who do you put on him in coverage to shine? So for me, I've just been nothing short of impressed with what Trey'Dez Green has provided this team.
Yeah, no, it's pretty insane where else he's at with tight ends. I mean, what was Kelly known for coming from Notre Dame? O line and tight ends, and look what's happening right now. You're gonna have 2 first-round tackles. Dellinger will probably be a third round pick, maybe higher, maybe some probably around there. So probably day 2 pick. It's pretty impressive to see what he's done in a short amount of time. You think Pimpton is the tight end 2 right now, or do you think it's just kind of like, I mean, obviously Taylor's your number 1, but do you think Pimpton and Trey'Dez Green are kind of fighting for that number 2 spot?
I think you're going to see all 3 guys on the field this year. We've already seen them kind of work in 2 tight end schemes where it was Mason Taylor and Kamorian Pimpton, but I think you're going to see a lot of Trey'Dez Green too. This isn't going to be a guy who redshirts. Like, you're going to see all 3 of those guys kind of make an instant impact. It's going to be big time. I think you're starting to see Joe Sloan and Cortez Hankton as the co-offensive coordinators kind of expand this playbook a little bit more. You have to improve in the run game. You're losing over 1,000 yards on the ground with Logan Diggs gone, Jaden Daniels gone. So, you kind of have to see some guys step up there, and it's going to start with the blocking. And we've seen Mason Taylor improve as a blocking tight end, Morian Pimpton improve as a blocking tight end. If you start to get the run game established, it opens up opportunities for the RPO game where we could see Kamorian Pimpton shine as a receiving tight end. So the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. You're going to see these tight ends hit the field, and it's going to be a sight to watch.
If I were to ask you a question, who do you think is going to get more touches this year, John Emery or Caden Durham? Who would you put money on?
I'd probably say John Emery just because he's getting a lot more run than Caden Durham right now. Obviously, you got that 1-2 punch of Josh Williams and Caleb Jackson. That's your running back room right now. But you also have John Emery, who's still recovering from that torn ACL that he suffered last year. And despite still kind of rehabbing a little bit, he's getting a lot of touches. We're in full pads now, so I want to see how much he actually gets from a full contact perspective. But I really think that John Emery is going to be a piece in this running back room that they fall back on. But Caden Durham is no slouch. Like, this is a guy who's finally starting to get more reps during camp, finally getting more reps during 7-on-7 drills. So I'm intrigued with what Caden provides this team just because he's so damn versatile. He's so fast. Like, it's so hard to bring him down in space. He showed that in high school, and I firmly believe he's going to carry that over to this year as well. But just kind of locking on that question, I definitely think that John Emery's going to get more touches than him.
How does Caden Durham's size look? Because one of my friends asked me, he's like, I don't think he's going to play that much because of his size. I was like, I don't know if that's true. Like, does he look like a little below average just overall size wise for a running back, or is he like kind of look the part on that?
He's a tank. I mean, he's an
Okay.
absolute tank. He's built. He's stocky. A lot of people might question the height because he's like 5'9" ish, but no, he's not undersized by any means. He's an absolute speedster. And look, even if he was 5'5", good luck tackling him in open space because this dude's a bolt of lightning. He's a track star. It's why he didn't enroll early. It's why he ended up enrolling during the summer because he wanted to do his senior year of track at Duncanville. So he enrolled in the summer. He started turning heads then, and he's really starting to emerge now as we transition into the end of week 2 of camp.
Have they used him on like kickoff returns or punt returns or anything?
No, I haven't seen much of him. Your 4 return specialists, well, punt returners, it's Zavion Thomas, Aaron Anderson, Jelani Watkins, and Kyle Parker.
And they
Those are the
rotate
4 guys.
those four punt guys. Are they rotating them in kickoff as well? Like, are they the same guys?
Yeah, you're gonna likely see Zavion Thomas, one of those 4 guys, and then probably Caleb Jackson as your guys in the kick return game.
You think they're going to use Caleb Jackson in the kickoff game and have him kind of as like RB2? You think?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I would classify him as RB2. I think I would put him as like RB1B, because he's going to eventually kind of take on the role of a majority of touches for that team. Look, Josh Williams is a phenomenal pass protection guy, a blocking running back, but Caleb Jackson's a jack of all trades. I could see him, emerging as that number 1 guy by the time SEC play rolls around.
Yeah, I heard a stat like Josh Williams doesn't really get that many carries. Like, I don't think he's had more than like he's either like 12 or 15 carries a game. Like, he's kind of been, I wouldn't say the Alvin Kamara role, but like maybe like a role where like you seldomly use them or use them specifically for certain things. So he really never has been a bell cow back. So that's why I kind of asked, because they've traditionally thrown running backs in the kickoff game. So I didn't know if Caden Durham could be like a natural, like get some experience and do this. But yeah, you never know. It sounds like embarrassment of riches, like you said. It's pretty impressive what they've done. I guess we can kind of flip to recruiting. So obviously they got a big time safety today. Jimcoily. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Safety. Corey Raymond's kind of putting it together a little bit. I know a lot of people were doubting him. Probably like a month or 2 ago. It's finally starting to hit his stride. You want to touch on him for a minute?
Yeah, so for Jimcoily, I mean, this is a guy who really fits that new spot on this Blake Baker defense at the star role. And that star role is a hybrid linebacker safety position, and that's what Major Burns is playing this year. And I think CJ Jimcoily fits it to a T. He's a guy who can play all over the defensive backfield. If he pans out to become a full-time linebacker, so be it. But I think the star position is going to be his bread and butter. He's 6'3", 210. He's a big, big guy, and he ultimately picked LSU over Alabama, Tennessee, and Stanford. And he was really high on Stanford. From what I was told, that it was kind of 2-horse race between Stanford and LSU because he's so high on academics. He's an intelligent kid. He boasts over a 4.0 GPA. And ultimately the presentation that Jake Olson, LSU safety coach, and the rest of the staff, once he was on his official visit, it put it over the top. And now he kind of is here. He joins the 2025 class that is already up to 20 commitments. It's the number 3 class in the country. And I don't see them slowing down. I think you'll see at least 2 more guys pop this month, and that's at least 2 guys pop this month. So I'm intrigued with what they're building here, and Jimcoily, to get him on board is big. The staff's really high on him, and I kind of can't wait to see what he brings because that new star role is so interesting to me. I want to see how it plays out this year, and then ultimately what Jimcoily can provide once he's actually in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, and then look at the size, like 6'3", 210. DJ Pickett 6'4". Like they're putting some size together. It's always good to have size in the secondary. So yeah, I mean the 2025 class is gonna be really, really special. I'm excited for it. And then you said one of the kids that could possibly pop, you didn't say his name, but one that's speculated, he decommitted from Miami, the receiver, Philip Wright. What's the latest word with him? Does he set a commitment date yet, or is it
Yeah,
kind of?
so Philip Wright, Louisiana native, he's from Destrehan. He decommitted from Michigan, and this is a guy who's an absolute gamer. He's a speedster. He's kind of an under recruited type of guy, and I guess I'd say under evaluated. He's only a 3-star, but he has big time Power 5 offers. So under evaluated is probably, or under recruited is probably where I would say. But LSU's trending. He's going to be on board sooner rather than later. I wouldn't be surprised if he pops within the next 42 to 78 hours. But
Mm.
this is a guy who's really on LSU's radar, and ultimately he's going to land in that 2025 class. It's just a matter of when. And he adds another really impressive, talent to the 2025 class at the receiving position. You got 5-star Derek Meadows. You also have Teron Francis, the number 1 wide receiver in the state. You add Philip Wright to the mix too, and you're pretty set with some impressive talent. So, yeah, Philip's a talented guy. He's exceptional, and ultimately, once he gets on board, it's going to give LSU a really good boost in the receiving core.
Are they looking at any other receivers outside those three? I know Jamie French, but I don't know if he's realistic or not. They lost Lockett not lost, but Lockett committed to Texas. I know who had LSU interest. Is there anyone outside French and Wright that they could be targeting for a receiver?
I think French is the guy you're going to start to put all your eggs in one basket for. It's going to be an LSU Miami battle down the stretch, is what it kind of points towards right now.
Hmm.
It was really big to get him back in town last month, and this is going to be one that kind of battles down to the wire. He's got a commitment date set for late August, and LSU's going to turn up the heat. It's going to be an LSU Miami battle down the stretch, and I'm really intrigued to see what happens there because you already got one 5-star in Derek Meadows. Lord knows what can happen if you get another one in Jamie French. You're going to be looking at this recruiting class inching towards number 1 overall. So that's kind of the guy that they have on their radar right now. If some other guys pop up, I'll definitely say something. But for now, I think all signs are pointing to them trying to get French into this class. But it's going to be a battle for sure. It's not necessarily set in stone like maybe somebody like Philip Wright, who it's just a matter of time.
Philip Wright, and then who else would you say, just in general, that could possibly commit this month
I
if
think
you
I
have
think a
someone on
lot
your
of the
radar?
attention I think a lot of the attention turns to South Carolina native Mike Tyler. He's a tight end, and they're looking to do a 2 tight end class, and they already have JD LaFleur, who's the number 1 tight end in the state, committed. He's an LSU legacy. So I think if you want a 2 tight end class, I think all signs kind of point to Mike Tyler as a guy who could pop next. And if you were to ask me, I already predicted him to make it into this class. It's just a matter of time. It's a battle down the stretch. I talked to somebody who said it's an LSU and Duke battle.
Duke.
He's got a lot of the East Coast teams on his radar right now, and LSU and Duke are turning up the heat for him. And he really showed out at LSU's camp over the summer. He kind of dominated. This was a guy that immediately got on LSU's radar, and they extended him an invitation to come down to the Bayou Splash. And most of the guys that came to town all had offers, all were committed, stuff like that. But ultimately, Mike Tyler got the offer, and once he got it, it was the type of deal where, look, it's a matter of time till he pops. So I kind of have my eye on Mike Tyler and Philip Wright to join the class before the month's over. But Mike Tyler's fantastic.
Okay. Anything else you want to touch on? Oh, Kalaje Cobbins. I keep hearing about him. Have you noticed anything? Is he popped off? He's a freshman linebacker, right?
Yeah, he's a true freshman at a Destrehan, and he's starting to emerge. But I think ultimately he'll redshirt this season just because you have a lot of talent as your edge rushers. But we'll see what happens there. But Kalaj has looked fantastic. He's looked great in one-on-ones. He's looked great in position drills. He's a guy who's going to be a key piece to this team for the foreseeable future.
Okay, that's good to know. Anything you want to touch on? You pretty good for now.
No, we hit on fall camp, hit on recruiting. I feel good.
Yeah, we'll do a pod before the USC game. I'm sure there'll be other stuff that pops up, but yeah, good one nonetheless. So appreciate you guys tuning in. If you can like and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.